My fingers had just closed around a water bottle when they brushed against something cold, metallic, and entirely out of place. I pulled it from the depths of the backpack, this black box with its wires and its single pulsing red eye. And in that instant, the world I knew, the world of a father rushing to his dying son, shattered into a million suspicious pieces. Has there ever been a moment in your life where a single, ordinary action, reaching for a drink, answering a phone, turning a key, suddenly tilted the axis of your entire reality, where everything you believed to be true was revealed as a carefully painted backdrop? This is the story of that moment for me. My name is Elias Vance. For 38 years, I ran a freight logistics company out of Greensboro, North Carolina. I built it from a single truck into a fleet, sold it for a comfortable retirement, and believed the hardest part of my life was behind me. I was a widower. My wife Sarah was taken by cancer a decade prior. My greatest pride, my anchor in the world, was my son Julian. The morning it began was a Saturday in mid-December, a brittle, beautiful morning. Frost lace decorated my windshield, and the world outside my kitchen window was silent and still, holding its breath. I was savoring the slow ritual of my first coffee, the steam warming my face, planning nothing more dramatic than a trip to the hardware store. The grandfather clock in the hall marked the peaceful passage of time with its familiar, patient tick. When the phone rang, it didn't just break the silence. It violated it. The tone was somehow sharper, more insistent. A cold needle of intuition pricked the base of my skull before I even moved. I set the mug down, its contents sloshing, and answered. What I heard on the other end was not a voice, but a storm of anguish. Sobs, gulping air, words torn and ragged. Elias, it's Julian. Megan? I said, my daughter-in-law's name a question. Megan, breathe. What's wrong? Where's Julian? The story she choked out was a nightmare in fragments, a celebratory breakfast for their anniversary, the drive home. Another vehicle, swerving, cutting them off on the highway outside Atlanta. A loss of control, the scream of twisting metal. Julian, unconscious, being rushed to a trauma center. The doctors were using words like critical, unstable, touch and go. They don't know if he'll make it through the day, she wept, the sound scraping against my ear. You have to come. Now, Elias, please. He needs you here. The granite countertop beneath my palm felt like the only solid thing in a universe that was liquefying. My son. My boy. I saw him at 8 years old with a scraped knee. At 16 behind the wheel of my old station wagon for his first drive. At 25 standing tall at his wedding. All those versions of him collapsed into one terrifying image. A pale, broken form on a gurney, miles away. I did not think. I moved. My body was a machine fueled by pure dread. I thundered up the stairs, my aging joints protesting, to my bedroom, and there, draped over the reading chair by the window, was the backpack. Megan had left it for me 2 nights before, during a casual visit. For when you finally decide to join us for that weekend at the beach, she'd said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, one less thing for you to worry about, right? It had seemed like a thoughtful, if slightly pushy, gesture. I'd thanked her and forgotten about it. Now I grabbed it. I yanked the zipper open and blindly threw in a handful of essentials from my dresser, a clean shirt, socks, a worn sweater that smelled faintly of my cedar closet. The bag already had weight to it, a substantial heft, but my mind dismissed it. She'd probably packed a towel, sunscreen, things for a beach trip. There was no room in my panic for scrutiny. Have you ever been in such a state of emergency that you bypass all your normal checks? You operate on a single burning directive? That was me. I was a missile locked onto a target, my son's hospital room. Keys, wallet, coat. I crossed the garage to my car, a sensible sedan I'd paid for in full, with my retirement bonus. It represented freedom, simplicity. I threw the backpack onto the passenger seat, its weight thudding dully against the leather. The engine turned over, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times, but today it felt like a starter's pistol. I reversed onto the frost-whitened street, the tires cracking the thin ice. The interstate entrance beckoned, a concrete mouth ready to swallow me. I merged into the sparse midday traffic, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my mantra a whispered plea against the windshield. Hold on, Julian. I'm coming. Just hold on. For the first hour, the world was a blur of gray asphalt, bare winter trees, and the dashed white line hypnotically pulling me south. The fear was a physical occupant in the car, sitting heavily in my chest, tightening my throat. But then, slowly, another sensation began to weave itself into the fabric of my panic. It started as a faint, unnatural vibration in the pedal under my foot, a deeper, more resonant hum than the engine's normal purr. It traveled up through the steering column, a subtle, persistent thrum I could feel in my palms. The car felt sluggish, as if it were pulling a hidden trailer. My rational mind, what little was left of it, offered excuses. The road surface, the cold affecting the tires, my own fraught nerves amplifying everything. But a deeper, older instinct, the same one that had twinged at the phone's ring, stirred. Something was wrong. Not with me, not just with the situation ahead, but with the very machine carrying me toward it. And I was parched. A desert dryness filled my mouth, my tongue sticking to the roof, the fear, the heat blasting from the vents, the shallow breathing, it had sucked all the moisture from me. I remembered Megan's offhand comment from when she'd given me the bag. I even tossed in a few bottles of water and some of those almond cookies you like. A green sign materialized on the roadside. Rest area, 1 mile. It was an oasis, not just for water, but for a moment to steady myself, to gulp air that wasn't thick with dread and this strange mechanical unease. I signaled and guided the car off the highway. The rest area was a lonely concrete island under a vast, indifferent sky. A few long-haul trucks slept in the far corners. The wind whipped across the open pavement, carrying a bitter chill. I parked away from the building. The silence after cutting the engine sudden and profound. My own ragged breathing was the loudest sound. I turned to the backpack on the seat beside me. My heart was doing a frantic, uneven tap dance against my ribs. I unzipped the main compartment and pushed aside the sweater I'd just packed. My hand found the cool, smooth cylinder of a plastic water bottle. Relief. But as I went to pull it free, my fingers snagged on a strap, then brushed against something else. Not fabric. Not plastic. Metal. Hard edges. Wires. I froze, my hand buried in the bag. Slowly, carefully, I moved the clothing aside. There it was. A rectangular black box, about the size of a thick paperback novel. It was made of a dense, matte metal. Along its sides, thin, insulated wires snaked into small ports, and on one face, a single lead glowed with a steady, rhythmic pulse. Red, like a heartbeat, but not a healthy one. A monitored mechanical heartbeat. This was not a GP's. This was not a travel charger, or some gadget from a beach trip. This was an artifact from a different kind of world, a world of intention and concealed function. It had been placed here, wedged between folds of clothing, hidden, but not so well that someone searching for a water bottle wouldn't find it. A cold that had nothing to do with the December air seeped into my bones. What in God's name? The words left my lips in a cloud of vapor. My mind, suddenly terrifyingly clear, became a collision zone of two realities. Reality 1, my son is dying. I am a father on a desperate mercy dash. Reality 2, my daughter-in-law packed this bag. There is a mysterious technical device hidden within it. My car feels and sounds wrong. A switch. I saw a tiny, almost flush toggle on the box's side. As I lifted the object for a closer look, my thumb, trembling, grazed it. Click. A soft, definitive sound. The red light vanished. In its place, a pale yellow light began to blink. And then came the sound. Beep. A pause. A pause. Beep. Beep. The intervals shortened. The pace quickened. Beep. 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 It was a relentless digital metronome counting down to something. The sound was small, but in the sealed tomb of my car, it was deafening. It drilled into my ears, into my brain. This was no accident. This was a design. And in a flash, I knew with absolute certainty what I had to do. The hospital in Atlanta was no longer my destination. Every cell in my body screamed that going there was the path to a cliff's edge. The beacon pulling me forward had just been revealed as a lure. I remembered a sign I'd passed before the rest area. State Police Barracks, next exit. With hands that shook so badly I could barely control them, I wrapped the beeping, blinking thing in the sweater, muffling its sound to a dull, persistent throb. I shoved it back into the backpack, zipped it shut, and started the car. I did not call Megan. I did not call Julian's phone. A primitive, survivalist instinct had taken over. Do not alert the predator. I pulled out of the rest area, but instead of merging back onto the southbound lanes, I crossed the overpass and took the northbound ramp for a single exit, then followed the signs to a low-slung brick building flying the state flag. What would you have done in that moment? Would suspicion have been enough to override the desperate pull toward a wounded child? Or would love have blinded you all the way to the point of no return? The police barracks parking lot was nearly empty. The place had a quiet, dormant feel. Holding the backpack like it contained a live venomous snake, I walked through the glass doors into a small utilitarian lobby. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. A young officer looked up from behind a bulletproof glass partition. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked. His eyes dropped to the bag I was clutching to my chest. I need to show you something," I said, my voice unfamiliar to me. "I found it. It shouldn't be in my bag." I set the pack on the counter, unzipped it, and pulled out the sweater-wrapped bundle. The yellow light pulsed through the wool. The beeps were now a continuous, urgent stream. The officer's professional detachment vanished. His face lost its color. He took a sharp step back. "Sir, don't touch that. Don't move it." He hit a button under the desk. A door at the back of the room swung open, and a man emerged. He was in his 50s, with a weary intelligence in his eyes and the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime walking into troubled rooms. His nameplate read, Inspector Delaney. He took in the scene in a millisecond. Me, a terrified old man, the officer's posture, the blinking bundle on the counter. his gaze fixed on the faint glow through the fabric. "Everyone clear this area." "Now?" he said, his voice low but carrying the force of an order. He didn't shout, but the young officer practically leaped backward. Delaney looked at me. "Is that your bag?" I nodded, words failing me. "Did you put that device in there?" "No, I found it. I was on my way to Atlanta. My son." He held up a hand, cutting me off. He keyed the radio mic on his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Delaney at Barracks 7. I need an odd unit here, possible remote-activated initiator. Treat as top priority. Civilian presenter, no apparent handler." The word initiator hung in the air. It was a clean, technical term that somehow sounded more frightening than bomb. "Come with me, sir." Slowly. "Leave the bag," Delaney instructed. He guided me outside, putting a good 50 yards between us and the building. The cold air was a shock. "What's your name?" "Elias. Elias Vance." "Mr. Vance, where were you going before you stopped here?" "The Atlanta Medical Center. My son Julian was in a crash. He's critical." "My daughter-in-law, Megan, called me. She packed that bag for me days ago. I just found that thing when I stopped for water." Inspector Delaney studied my face, reading the tsunami of fear, confusion, and dawning horror. "Who has access to your car, Mr. Vance?" "My son, Megan. They have keys to my house. We were close." The past tense inserted itself before I could stop it. Delaney's eyes narrowed slightly. "Stay right here. Don't go near your vehicle." Minutes later, a nondescript van arrived silently. 2 figures in heavy protective suits and helmeted visors emerged. The bomb squad. They moved with a deliberate, efficient grace. After a brief consultation with Delaney, one of them approached my blue sedan with a long pole-mounted mirror, sliding it carefully underneath the chassis. He stopped. His helmeted head tilted as he looked at a screen on his wrist. He gestured sharply to Delaney. The inspector walked over, looked at the screen, and his jaw set into a hard line. He turned and beckoned me forward. My legs were blocks of wood. "You need to see this, Mr. Vance." The technician angled the screen so I could view it. There, secured to the metal frame directly beneath the driver's seat, the seat I had been sitting in for over an hour, was a rectangular brick of gray putty, wrapped in tape, with wires leading to a small, sleek receiver. It was tucked up in the shadows, a hidden evil inches from where my body had been. C4, the technician said quietly, the 2 letters and a number carrying the weight of a tombstone. More than enough. The initiator in your bag would have completed the circuit. Remotely. The ground beneath me didn't just tilt, it fell away. The gray sky, the brick building, the cars, all of it receded into a tunneling distance. The only things left in sharp focus were the image on that screen and the meaning of the words. My car was meant to be my coffin, the highway, my funeral pyre. The desperate race to my son's bedside was the journey to my own obliteration. And the people who had given me the detonator and planted the explosive were the people I was racing to save. "I need to make a call," I whispered, my throat sandpaper raw. "The hospital. I need to know about Julian." Delaney handed me his phone, his expression unreadable. My fingers, numb and clumsy, managed to dial the main number for Atlanta Medical Center. I asked for the emergency department. "My son, Julian Vance. He was brought in this morning after a highway accident. Critical condition. Can you connect me to his nurse or give me an update?" There was a polite click, then hold music, a tinny, cheerful violin piece that was a cruelty in itself. After an eternity, the voice returned. "Sir, I've checked all admissions and our trauma registry for today. We have no patient named Julian Vance. There's no record of anyone matching that description being brought in from a motor vehicle collision this morning. The phone slipped from my hand. It clattered on the asphalt at my feet. I didn't hear it. The world had gone silent, save for a high-pitched whine in my ears. No accident, no critical sun. It was all a script, a performance. Megan's hysterical sobs, the terrifying details, the plea for haste, all of it was engineered for one purpose, to get me into that car, driving fast and distracted, while death waited under my seat. Inspector Delaney retrieved his phone. He placed a firm hand on my shoulder, steering me gently but insistently toward the barracks door. His touch was the only thing anchoring me to the planet. Back inside, in a small, cluttered office that smelled of old paper and cold coffee, he sat me down. He didn't offer hollow comfort. He placed a single manila folder on the desk between us. "Elias," he said, using my first name with a grim familiarity. The device, the explosive, the false emergency, this was a professional-grade plan. It wasn't a random act. It was a targeted elimination. He opened the folder. The top sheet was a financial printout. Julian's name was at the top. The columns of numbers were a disaster in ink. Overdrafts, massive credit card balances, lines of credit maxed out. The total at the bottom was a figure that made my stomach clench, $487,000. Crypto schemes that collapsed. High-interest loans. Online gambling debts, Delaney said, tapping the page. He's been sinking for years. Hiding it. He slid another document forward. It was a life insurance policy. My name as the insured. A benefit value of $2.5 million. The beneficiary, Julian Alexander Vance. "I never took out this policy," I breathed. "We know," Delaney said. "The signature is a forgery. A very good one. Our document lab is comparing it to samples from your daughter-in-law, Megan." The final piece he placed before me was a grainy screenshot from what looked like an online forum, a search history log. The queries were chillingly specific: remote detonation range, C4 stability in cold weather, vehicle electrical systems bypass. The username was a jumble of letters, but Delaney pointed to a note, traced to IP address, registered to Megan Vance. The evidence laid itself out like a prosecutor's opening statement. The motive, crippling debt. The means, research, forged documents, explosives. The opportunity, my trust, my son, and the woman he married. The love I felt for him didn't vanish, it transformed, curdling into a physical pain that felt like a chest wound. The boy I taught to fish, the young man I hugged at his graduation, the son I trusted with my house key, had he sat at my kitchen table, eaten my food, and known about the plastic death bolted beneath my chair? Inspector Delaney leaned forward, his elbows on the desk, his eyes holding mine. "They wanted you gone, Elias. They wanted the world to believe you died in a tragic, random accident on the way to a family emergency. And they almost got it. You have one incredible piece of luck. You got thirsty." He let that hang in the air for a moment. "Now, we can move on this. We can bring them in. But with what we have, circumstantial financials, a forged signature they'll claim you authorized, internet searches they'll say were for a book or a movie, their lawyers will spin a story. They'll paint you as a confused old man, me as an overzealous cop. They might walk, or they'll get a slap and be out in a few years to try again with the next scheme." He paused, his gaze intensifying. "Or we give them exactly what they want. but on our terms. I stared at him, the devastation in my soul momentarily eclipsed by a flicker of cold, dark curiosity. What are you saying? We make them believe they succeeded, Inspector Delaney said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. We let them think you're dead. We let them play their parts as the grieving family, and when they step forward to claim their prize, we'll be waiting. With evidence so airtight, no lawyer in the world can punch a hole in it. He leaned back, letting the proposition settle over me like a shroud. It's the only way to be sure, Elias. The only way to get true justice, and not just a legal loophole. But it means you have to disappear. For a while, to everyone, Elias Vance must cease to exist. I looked from the damning financials to the forged policy, to the ghost of my son's smile in my memory. The love was now a ghost, too, haunting a house of betrayal. What was left was a hollow, angry space where a father's heart used to beat. Inspector Delaney's eyes never left mine. They wanted you erased from the map. So, for now, that's what we'll give them. He let the silence stretch, then asked the question that would define everything to come. The question is, Elias, are you willing to die to prove they're killers? The silence in Inspector Delaney's office was a living thing, thick and heavy, absorbing the echo of his final, monumental question. Are you willing to die to prove they're killers? I wasn't looking at the financial statements or the forged policy anymore. I was staring at a hairline crack in the linoleum floor, seeing instead the ghost of my son as a toddler, chasing a firefly in our backyard. That ghost shimmered, then dissolved, replaced by the cold, technical image of the explosive device beneath my car seat. Two realities, irreconcilable. One had to be annihilated for the other to be exposed. My voice, when it finally came, was dry and flat, the sound of something breaking deep inside. What do I need to do? Delaney didn't smile. He gave a single, slow nod, as if accepting a solemn burden. You need to become a ghost. Right now, you walk out of this barracks, get in your car, and drive to a location we control. We handle the rest. Your car, your identity for the next few days, they belong to the investigation. Can you imagine the weight of that decision? To consciously step out of your own life, to let the world, including the people you once held closest, believe you are gone, to become a spectator at your own funeral? He laid out the plan with a detective's precision. My death would be a car fire, catastrophic and fast, on a remote stretch of interstate. The bomb squad would use a controlled charge to mimic the exact effect of the C4 they'd removed. A dental record would be arranged for identification. A news leak would be carefully managed. They'll see it on the local channels by evening, Delaney said. They'll have to react, and we'll be watching every move. He took my personal phone, my wallet, my keys, the artifacts of Elias Vance. In return, he gave me a plain, prepaid cell phone with a single number programmed into it. This is your lifeline. Mine is the only one that will ever ring. Do not use it for anything else. Do not call anyone from your past. A young officer drove me in an unmarked car to a safe house, a term that felt absurdly dramatic for the reality. It was a small, furnished apartment in a complex so bland it was nearly invisible. Beige walls, a brown sofa, a kitchenette with outdated appliances. A single window looked out onto a parking lot and a slice of featureless sky. It was a space designed to leave no memory. Stay inside. Keep the blinds closed. Do not leave for any reason, the officer instructed, his tone not unkind, but firm. "We'll bring you what you need." The door clicked shut behind him. The silence was absolute. I was alone with the echoing aftermath of betrayal and the eerie stillness of a life put on pause. I sat on the edge of the stiff sofa, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and waited for my own death. It was late afternoon when Delaney returned. He carried a small duffel bag with food, water, and a change of clothes. Without a word, he turned on the small television mounted to the wall, flipped to the local news, and turned up the volume. We didn't have to wait long. The anchorwoman's face was a mask of professional solemnity. We begin with breaking news of a fatal incident on Interstate 85 southbound this afternoon. Behind her, helicopter footage showed a horrific scene: the blackened skeletal remains of a blue sedan pulled onto the shoulder. Thick smoke still coiled into the gray sky. Emergency vehicles ringed it with flashing red and blue. Authorities confirm one person is dead following what appears to be a catastrophic vehicle fire. The blaze was so intense, it has complicated immediate identification. The screen switched to a file photo. My photo. A shot taken at a charity golf event a few years back, smiling, my arm around a colleague. I looked like a stranger. Sources close to the investigation have identified the victim as 62-year-old Elias Vance, a retired business owner from the Greensboro area. Mr. Vance was reportedly traveling alone. The cause of the fire is under investigation, but early indications suggest a possible mechanical failure. He is survived by his son, Julian Vance, and daughter-in-law, Megan Vance. The words "is survived by" hung in the air, a cruel joke. The graphic at the bottom of the screen read, "Fatal Highway Inferno, local man presumed dead." I stared at my own face, my own name, my own obituary playing out in prime time. A profound disconnection settled over me. It was like watching a documentary about someone I'd vaguely known. There was no grief, only a hollow, vibrating shock. Delaney muted the TV. Phase 1 is complete. Elias Vance is officially deceased. Now we watch. He set up 2 laptops on the small kitchen table, tapping into live feeds. One showed the cold, sterile hallway of the county medical examiner's office. The other was a grainy, color-adjusted view of the living room in my own house. My house. Seeing the familiar couch, the bookshelf, the fireplace from this secret, stolen perspective was a fresh violation. We placed cameras this afternoon while they were out making arrangements, Delaney said matter-of-factly. Audio too. We watched the digital clock on the feed tick past 7 p.m. Then headlights washed across the driveway. The front door opened. Julian and Megan walked in. They moved differently. Julian's shoulders were hunched, his steps heavy. He threw his coat onto the couch, a gesture that was both weary and oddly aggressive. Megan closed the door softly behind them, turned the deadbolt with a definitive click. For a long moment, they just stood in the middle of the room I'd built, in the silence of the home I'd made. The performance was over. The audience of neighbors and well-wishers was gone. Megan let out a long, slow breath, the kind you hold after a great exertion. Her shoulders, which had been raised and tense on the morgue feed we'd watched earlier, finally dropped. "It's done," she said. The 2 words were not filled with grief, but with release, with finality. Julian turned to her. His face, which had been convincingly crumpled with tears on the news clip a local station had aired, was now slack, empty. The redness around his eyes could have been from crying or from exhaustion. The policy, You're sure it's airtight? A faint, sharp smile touched Megan's lips. It never reached her eyes, which were calculating, assessing. $2.5 million, Julian. Perfectly valid. The claim is prepped. We just have to wait for the death certificate, file the paperwork, and play the grieving family for a few more days. Then we sign, and it's over. Julian sank into my favorite armchair, the one by the fireplace where I used to read the paper. He buried his face in his hands. What if they find something? What if the police? They won't. Megan cut in, her voice a steel blade. The car is slag. He is ash. There are no witnesses, no loose ends. It was a perfect, tragic accident. She walked to the sideboard where I kept a decanter of whiskey, a gift from Julian himself on my last birthday. She poured 2 generous glasses, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. She handed one to Julian. She raised her own glass. To us, she said, her voice low and intent. To our future. No more debts, no more lies. A clean start. Julian looked at the glass as if it contained poison. He looked from the liquid to her face, to the room around him. I saw the conflict warring in his eyes. Guilt, fear, a desperate hunger for the escape she promised. Slowly, hesitantly, he raised his glass. The crystal made a soft clink that the sensitive microphone picked up perfectly. To us, he echoed, but his voice was a hollow whisper. They drank. I watched my son swallow the toast to my destruction. What do you think was in his heart in that moment? Relief? Horror? Or just the numb acceptance of a path he could no longer turn back from? Something inside me, some last fragile thread of hope, snapped. The father in me, the part that had been making excuses, searching for a sign of coercion or regret, withered and died. I saw not my child, but a conspirator, a stranger drinking in my chair. Delaney watched me, not the screen. The guilt is there, in him. It's a pressure point. Her? She's just cold. We need to turn that pressure up, make them doubt their own perfect story. How? I asked, my own voice sounding as dead as I was supposed to be. We haunt them, Delaney said simply. The first operation was that night, around 11 p.m. When the house was dark and silent, Delaney gave a soft command into his radio. On the living room feed, the old analog radio on the bookshelf, a vintage model my wife Sarah had loved, suddenly glowed to life, not with a blast of sound, but with the soft crackling opening notes of a song. Same mucho. It was same mucho. Sarah's song. Our song. The one we danced to in the kitchen. The one I'd played for her on countless quiet evenings. The record player had broken years ago. This radio hadn't been used in a decade. Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, a silhouette of panic. Megan? Did you turn that on? Megan emerged from the bedroom, tying her robe. I thought it was you. They descended slowly, like people approaching a sleeping predator. The music continued to spill, sweet and haunting, into the dark room. Julian stared at the radio, its dial glowing a soft green. I unplugged this thing, he whispered. After he died. I unplugged it myself. Well, plug it out again, Megan said. But her voice had a thin, strained edge. Julian fumbled behind the unit, yanked the power cord from the wall. The music died instantly, leaving a silence that felt heavier, more charged than before. Megan forced a tight, nervous laugh. Old house, old wiring. It's nothing. She put a hand on his arm, but he flinched. He kept staring at the dark, silent radio, as if waiting for it to speak again. Yeah, Julian murmured, not looking at. Must be the wiring. In the safe house, Delaney allowed himself a grim, humorless smile. Seed planted. The next night, Sunday, the operation escalated. Delaney's team had accessed the house while Julian and Megan were at a meeting with a funeral director, a macabre piece of theater they had to maintain. They placed a single item with surgical precision. On the bedroom feed, we watched Julian get ready for bed. He was agitated, pacing. He finally crawled under the covers, reached up to turn off the lamp, and settled his head on the pillow. He went rigid. His eyes flew open in the dark. Slowly, with dawning horror, he sat up, switched the lamp back on, and reached beneath the pillow. His hand closed around something. He pulled it out. It was the detonator, the same black metallic box with its wires. The yellow lead was dark now, inert, but tucked under a rubber strap was a small folded slip of paper. With trembling hands, Julian unfolded it. The camera zoomed in, courtesy of Delaney's tech. The note was in my handwriting, a sample taken from an old grocery list and digitally reproduced. It read, "Forgot to turn this off, son? Pop." Julian's reaction was not a quiet gasp. It was a raw, animal sound of pure terror, a strangled scream that choked off into a whimper. He flung the device across the room as if it had burned him. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. No, 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 no. He scrambled back on the bed, pressing himself against the headboard, his breath coming in ragged, hysterical gulps. "It can't be. It was with him. It was supposed to be in the car." Megan burst into the room, her face pale. "What? What is it?" Her eyes found the device on the floor, all the color drained from her face. How is that here?" "It's him." Julian sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at the harmless box. "He's not dead. He knows. He knows everything." Megan crossed the room in 2 strides and slapped him, hard. The crack was loud in the quiet room. "Get a hold of yourself," she hissed, her composure cracking into fury. "He is dead. We saw what was left at the morgue. It's a trick. Someone is messing with us." "Who?" Julian cried, tears streaming down his face. "Who else knows? Who could have done this?" Megan knelt, picking up the device and the note with the very tips of her fingers, her own hands now shaking. She studied the handwriting, her lips pressed into a bloodless line. "I don't know," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But in 3 days, we meet with the insurance adjuster. Just 3 more days, Julian. We hold our nerve, we collect the money, and we vanish. We start over. Somewhere no one can find us. Just 3 days." Julian nodded, a mechanical, broken motion. He curled onto his side on the bed, drawing his knees to his chest, rocking slightly. And then, so softly the microphone almost missed it, came the whisper, choked with tears. "I'm sorry, Pop. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. Please forgive me." I heard it. In the sterile silence of the safe house, those words landed like physical blows. A part of me, the shattered father-shaped part, wanted to cry out, to offer the forgiveness he was begging for. The other part, the part that had seen the C4 and heard the toast, remained frozen. Delaney said nothing. He simply handed me a box of tissues. The gesture was more meaningful than any words. The following 3 days were an eternity of silent watching. We observed them maintain their public fade, the somber visits from friends, the arrangements for a memorial service they never intended to hold. We saw the private cracks widen. Julian jumped at every sound. Megan's eyes grew harder, more frantic, constantly scanning rooms. Finally, The morning arrived. Thursday, December 21st, the day of the insurance meeting. From the safe house, I dressed in a suit Delaney had provided. It didn't feel like my own skin. He drove me downtown to a sleek glass skyscraper that housed the regional offices of the insurance company. We took a private elevator to the 40th floor. "This is it, Elias," Delaney said, as we stepped into a small adjacent observation room. One wall was a one-way mirror, looking into a spacious, elegant conference room with a stunning city view. A long mahogany table dominated the space. 3 serious-looking men in suits were already there. "They'll be brought in shortly. You watch from here. You come in when I give the signal." He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "It's almost over." Through the glass, I saw the door to the conference room open. Julian and Megan walked in, dressed in impeccable, sober black. Megan wore the expression of dignified grief perfectly. Julian's face was a mask, but his right leg bounced uncontrollably under the table. The director, a man with silver hair and a grave demeanor, offered condolences. He explained the procedural final steps before releasing such a substantial policy payout. Julian nodded too quickly. Megan interlaced her fingers, the picture of strained composure. The director picked up a remote. As part of our due diligence on high-value claims, we sometimes review ancillary materials. We've been provided with some relevant security footage. He pressed a button. A large screen descended behind him. The lights dimmed. On the screen, in high-definition clarity, was my garage. The timestamp read 4:12 a.m., Saturday, December 16th. The footage showed 2 figures moving with furtive purpose. Julian, kneeling by the open driver's side door of my blue sedan, sliding underneath with a small flashlight, his hands working methodically, attaching a gray brick to the chassis. Megan standing watch, then carefully placing the black detonator into a backpack, the same olive-green backpack which she zipped and left by the door to the house. It was all there, every damning second. Julian made a sound like a wounded animal. His face turned the color of paper. Megan shot to her feet, her chair screeching back. "This is a fake," she screamed, her voice losing all its practiced control. "A deep fake. This is illegal. You can't use this." The director remained impassive. This footage was recovered from cloud storage linked to security cameras Mr. Vance had installed 2 weeks prior. It has been authenticated by digital forensic experts. It is, I assure you, quite admissible. He didn't have cameras. Megan insisted, her chest heaving. A new voice, calm and familiar, spoke from the conference room doorway she'd just entered. "Actually, Megan, I did. I stood in the doorway." Inspector Delaney's solid frame filled the space behind me, his presence a silent declaration that the game was over. The reaction was a study in human collapse. Julian didn't move. He simply deflated. The air left his lungs in a silent, shocked rush. His eyes, wide and unblinking, locked onto my face as if I were an apparition from a nightmare he'd created. His brain refused the input. This was impossible. His mouth opened and closed, but the only sound was a wet, choked gurgle deep in his throat. No, 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 it was a whisper, a prayer of denial. He shook his head. A tiny, frantic motion. The sun I'd raised was gone, replaced by a terrified child confronting the monster under the bed. And the monster was his own consequence. Megan's reaction was the polar opposite. She didn't see a ghost. She saw a tactical problem. Her head snapped toward me, her eyes, wide for a millisecond, instantly narrowing into slits of furious calculation. Her gaze darted from my face to Delaney's, to the stone-faced insurance executives assessing threats, weighing lies. The mask of dignified grief didn't just slip, it was torn off and thrown aside. "What is this?" she shrieked, her voice climbing to a register of pure manufactured outrage. She took a step back, her hand flying to her chest in a theatrical gesture. "Who are you people?" "My father-in-law is dead. We buried him. This is psychological torture." She pointed a trembling accusatory finger at me. "Get this imposter out of here. How dare you? Confront the person who tried to erase you. Watch one collapse into the abyss of their guilt, and the other fight with the viciousness of a cornered animal. In that moment, what survives? Remorse? Or just the raw will to survive at any cost?" I took 3 slow steps into the room. The plush carpet absorbed the sound. My focus was entirely on Julian, on the ruins of the boy I'd taught to throw a baseball. It's no act, Megan, just a man who pulled over for a bottle of water. I shifted my gaze, letting it settle heavily on my son. "You hugged me goodbye, Julian. You told me to drive safe. What were you picturing when you said that? The fire?" The sound that escaped Julian was not human. It was a raw animal whimper of pure, unadulterated agony. He folded at the waist, collapsing forward onto the polished conference table, his forehead hitting the wood with a dull thud. His shoulders began to shake violently with silent, convulsive sobs. He didn't try to speak. Language had failed him. Megan whirled on Director Higgins, her performance shifting from victimized daughter to outraged consumer. "You're complicit in this. This is entrapment, fraud. That footage is a deep fake, a digital forgery. I want your name and your supervisor's name. I am retaining a lawyer immediately." Higgins remained an island of calm in her storm. He steepled his fingers. "Mrs. Vance, the footage from your father-in-law's garage has undergone analysis by 3 independent forensic digital labs. It is authentic, unaltered, and clearly time-stamped. It shows you and your husband in the act of preparing a vehicle-borne explosive device with the apparent intent to kill the owner of that vehicle." Inspector Delaney chose that moment to move. He stepped fully into the room, his authority a tangible force. In his hand was a single sheet of paper. "Megan Elias Vance, Julian Alexander Vance, you are both under arrest for the attempted first-degree murder of Elias Vance, conspiracy to commit murder, aggravated insurance fraud, and forgery of a financial instrument." He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod toward the hallway. The door opened. 2 uniformed officers entered, their faces set in lines of professional detachment. This was the moment the chessboard vanished, revealing the cage. Real, visceral panic, not the acted kind, flashed in Megan's eyes. Her survival instinct, honed and ruthless, kicked into overdrive. She backpedaled from the approaching officer, her hand shooting out to point directly at her husband, who was a weeping heap on the table. Him. The word was a shriek, sharp enough to cut glass. It was all him. The debts, the bomb, the whole sick plan. He threatened me. He said he'd kill me if I didn't go along. I was a prisoner. I was scared for my life. Her performance was masterful, a torrent of believable terror. She was building a new narrative on the fly, with Julian as the sole architect, the lone monster. She was throwing him into the path of the avalanche to save herself. Julian's head jerked up. Tears and mucus streaked his face. He stared at his wife, the woman he'd loved, the partner in his crime, as she coldly constructed a scaffold for him alone. The betrayal was so absolute, so instantaneous it seemed to short-circuit his grief. A wounded, disbelieving sound escaped him, a mix of a sob and a laugh. "Liar," he breathed, the word thick with a hurt that went deeper than any fear of prison bars. "You're a liar. It was your idea. You found the instructions. You forged the policy. You said he was old, that he'd lived his life, that the money was ours for the taking." His bloodshot eyes found mine, pleading for something. Understanding. Absolution, I don't know. "She said it would be instant, Dad, like flipping a switch." The icy stillness within me held firm. The part of me that was a father had been buried under the cold, clinical image of the C4 charge on the bomb squad's screen. "Does a fuel air explosion look like flipping a switch, Julian?" My voice was low, devoid of heat, which made it all the more final. "You called me Pop. You kissed my cheek. And then you helped bolt a weapon of war under the seat where I sat." He had no rebuttal. The last flicker of fight died in his eyes. He slumped back into his chair, a marionette with its strings cut, staring vacantly at the grain of the wood. The officer moved to Megan first. The metallic click-snap of the handcuffs closing around her slender wrists seemed deathly loud. The moment the restraint locked, she jerked against it, spinning with a feral grace to face Julian one last time. All pretense vanished, stripped away to reveal the naked, venomous core of her. "You pathetic, sniveling coward," she spat, the words dripping with contempt. "You weak, spineless failure. You'll die rotting in a concrete box. You deserve every second of it." They led her from the room. She didn't walk. She was half-dragged, her heels scrabbling for purchase, her stream of vitriol continuing down the hallway until a distant door closed, swallowing the sound. Then, the room's attention turned to Julian. The remaining officer helped him to his feet. He was limp, unresisting, a man emptied of everything. As the second set of cuffs was secured behind his back, he turned his ravaged, tear-streaked face toward me. His lips trembled. "Dad, it was a croak, a ruin of a word. I'm so sorry, I never wanted to." The sentence fractured, lost in a fresh wave of sobs. It was a child's apology for a broken vase, horrifically mismatched to the crime. I looked at him, my son, in cuffs. I saw the ghost of the boy who'd fallen asleep on my shoulder during a long drive. I saw the man who had calculated the explosive yield needed to erase me. The love I felt was a phantom pain, an echo from a severed limb. I held up my right hand, palm out. A simple, silent gesture. "Stop." The plea died in his throat. The fragile, desperate hope that had flickered in his eyes, for forgiveness, for some last thread of connection, guttered and went dark. He understood. Some deserts are too vast to cross. Some chasms cannot be bridged. "Take him," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They led him away. His soft, broken weeping was the only sound in the expansive room until the door sighed shut on its hydraulic hinge, leaving a silence so profound it felt like pressure on the eardrums. Director Higgins cleared his throat, the sound awkward in the void. "Mr. Vance, on behalf of the company, there are no words for." "It's done," I said, cutting off the uncomfortable condolences. A wave of exhaustion, heavier than any I'd ever known, washed over me. It was the fatigue of a marathon runner who has crossed the finish line into a strange, empty stadium. I looked at Delaney. "Can we go?" He met my gaze and gave a single, firm nod. "It's done." But an ending in a quiet room is not the same as an ending in the world. The final, public chapter was written months later in a downtown courtroom packed with the morbidly curious, the press, and the simply vengeful. The Ghost Father case had become a local spectacle. I sat in the very last row, disguised by a baseball cap and glasses, a ghost attending his own legal autopsy. Inspector Delaney was magnificent on the stand. He was a master carpenter, methodically nailing each piece of evidence into place with calm, unshakable precision. The garage footage played on a large screen for the jury. Again and again. The silent, grainy movie of my own murder being planned. The audio from my home, the chilling clink of the toast, the hissed arguments, Julian's whispered midnight plea for forgiveness, echoed in the hushed courtroom. The mountain of evidence was insurmountable. The prosecutor was a pit bull. He painted Megan as the architect, cold, calculating, the forger, the researcher, the ruthless profit-taker. Julian was the weak-willed foreman, the hands that did the work, morally bankrupt and drowning, but a willing participant who had crawled under that car himself. His defense attorney, a man with a perpetually worried expression, painted a picture of coercion, a domineering, manipulative wife, a man psychologically battered, trapped in debt and fear, his agency eroded. It was likely the truth, or a version of it. But the judge, a woman with eyes that had seen every shade of human failure, focused on a bedrock principle. She looked at Julian, not Megan, as she delivered the crux of it. Fear may explain a path, Mr. Vance, but it does not absolve you of the steps you took upon it. Manipulation may cloud judgment, but it does not erase moral agency. You had 1,000 opportunities to choose differently, to pick up a phone, to speak a word, to save your father's life. In every critical moment, you made a choice that served your own desperation. Megan was sentenced to life in a maximum security prison with no possibility of parole. She heard the verdict with a cold, tight smile, as if the judge were a poor player in a drama she alone understood. Julian received 25 years. When the gavel fell, his knees buckled. The officers beside him had to hold him up as he dissolved into helpless, body-racking sobs. I felt no victory, no sweet taste of revenge, only a hollow, granite certainty. The son I had loved had been gone for a long time, lost in a maze of bad decisions and moral surrender. The state was merely putting a period on a sentence he had already begun serving. In the aftermath, I dismantled the life that had nearly become my tomb. I sold the big, echoing house with its manicured lawn and its garage that would forever be a crime scene in my mind. I liquidated almost all of my assets. The money, the bloody, glittering prize they had tried to kill for, I gave away. It felt like handling contaminated material. I directed it to organizations that help people navigate debt without crime, to charities that support isolated seniors, to foundations that build rather than destroy. I kept a modest, carefully calculated sum. Enough for security, not for luxury. Now I live in a one-bedroom apartment in an unremarkable building. The walls are beige, the furniture is comfortable and second-hand. There is no garage. My view is of a small, tidy courtyard where a dog sometimes barks and children sometimes play. It is a life of deliberate simplicity. I volunteer 3 days a week at a senior center. I read newspapers aloud to men and women whose eyes have faded, but whose minds are sharp. I bring them coffee. I listen. I have heard stories that would break your heart. Tales of children who vanished, of fortunes squandered by heirs, of love that turned to quiet neglect. I am not a unique tragedy. I am a member of a quiet, reluctant club. Knowing this doesn't heal the wound, but it makes the scar feel less like a brand of singular shame. We spend our lives building a legacy. But what is it truly? Is it the number in a bank account? The deed to a property? Or is it something more fragile, etched not in paper, but in the moral character of those we loved and raised? What will your legacy be? In the late afternoons, I often sit on my small balcony. I watch the light change. I listen to the mundane symphony of the neighborhood, a lawnmower, a distant siren, the chatter of someone on a phone. I think about what was incinerated on that highway and what was salvaged from the ashes. I lost my son, the son I believed I had raised, but I saved my soul. I salvaged the ability to look at my reflection without seeing a collaborator in my own destruction. I preserved the fundamental belief that no amount of money, no depth of fear, no weight of debt can ever justify the murder of trust, the betrayal of love. Letters arrive, maybe twice a month. The envelope is always the same, with the prison's return address stamped in stark ink. Julian's handwriting is on the front. I do not open them. I slide them, unread, into a simple cardboard shoebox that I keep on the top shelf of my bedroom closet. They are not correspondence. They are relics, like a piece of shrapnel. Tangible proof that the explosion happened. Perhaps one day, years from now, curiosity will outweigh the pain. Today is not that day. Megan, I am told, has become a phantom in the prison system. The woman who craved control, luxury, and admiration now lives in a universe devoid of all three. Her beauty, once her currency, holds no value there. The world that once envied her curated life has long since scrolled past her mugshot. And me? The man whose fiery death was a 30-second segment on the evening news? I am here. I am not wealthy. I am not surrounded by family. You will not find my name in any society column. But I am alive. Truly, consciously, achingly alive. I savor the bitterness of my morning coffee. I feel the weight of a good book in my hands. I cherish the uncomplicated, genuine laughter of the friends I've made at the center. People who know me only as Elias, the quiet man who reads well. I have reclaimed 1,000 small, profound joys that I once took for granted. I gave away the fortune they killed for. What I kept, my name, my integrity, the sunrise, was worth infinitely more. One evening, as I was sodding garlic in a small pan, an old song floated from the kitchen radio I'd bought at a thrift store. It was our song, the one from The Haunting. For a heartbeat, my hand froze. The memory of its use as a psychological weapon was a cold hand on my neck. Then, I took a deep breath, inhaled the scent of cooking garlic, and slowly began to hum along. The melody was no longer a ghost's tool. It was just a song my wife had loved. The memory was mine again, bittersweet and clean, finally purified of poison. That is the final, hard-won lesson, etched into me not with ink but with fire. Love is essential, but it is not our trust is sacred, but it must be tempered with wisdom. Unchecked generosity, devoid of boundaries, is not love. It is an invitation for your own heart to be used as a weapon against you. I have shared this story with you not for your pity, but for your protection. If you take one thing from the wreckage of my life, let it be this: Love with your whole heart, but see with clear eyes. Provide for those you cherish, but do not confuse provision with purchasing loyalty. Build your legacy on the unshakable bedrock of principle and example, not on the shifting, treacherous sands of wealth and blind permission. My name is Elias Vance. This is not a script for a thriller. This was my reality. If this account has held meaning for you, if it has given you pause, I would consider it a privilege to know. Leave a comment below. Tell me where in the world you're listening from. Type Jackson's stories so I know you were part of this conversation. And if you know someone, a parent, a friend, a colleague, who might be blinding themselves with love or drowning in the temptation of an easy way out, share this with them. Sometimes the most courageous act of love is to speak a hard truth before it becomes a devastating one, because the greatest inheritance you can leave is not a stack of money, but the indelible example of a life lived with eyes wide open, a heart wisely guarded, and a soul intact. Thank you for listening. May you hold your loved ones close, but never so close that you lose sight of who they truly are and who you must always be. Blind trust wrote my obituary. A moment of clarity and a simple thirst gave me back the pen to write a new ending.